Good morning, everyone. And I'm Tenzin Doma, Program Coordinator of Tibet House, and I'll be moderating today's inauguration session. On behalf of Tibet House and Earth Foundation, and I would like to extend our warm welcome to our respected chief guest, Dr. D.S. Rana, Director of Ranaji, Director of Sri Gangaram Hospital, New Delhi, and the keynote speakers, Venerable Geshe Dojit Amdullah, Director of Tibet House, and Mrs. Madhuri Menonji, Dean, the BAM Foundation, and our convener, Dr. Nivedita Chalilji, Earth-Based Counseling and Earth-Based Therapy Foundation, and our esteemed speakers and the vibrant participants gathered here for 2 days National Conference on Understanding Psychology and its Practice, Eastern and Western Perspectives. Before I proceed, I would like to make a humble request to everyone present over here to kindly switch your mobile phone to the silent mode or airplane mode to avoid interruption. Thank you very much. Now I would like to request our chief guest, Dr. D.S. Ranaji, our keynote speakers, Keshudoji Damdullah and Mrs. Madhuri Menonji, and our convener, Dr. Nivedita Chalilji, to kindly light the lamp and will request to take their respective seats on their dais. Thank you. Before we begin the actual session, I would like to briefly introduce you all about Tibet House and its activities. Tibet House, New Delhi was established in 1965 by His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama of Tibet for the purpose of preserving the culture heritage of Tibet at a time when it faced extinction in its homeland, as well as for providing a center for Tibetan culture and Buddhist studies. Tibet House, New Delhi was the first of its kind in the world. His Holiness the Dalai Lama's recurring emphasis on developing a sense of universal harmony and compassion as its own effective antidote to global suffering, together with the need for a meaningful exchange between different religious and cultural tradition, also had a profound effect on the purpose and its activities of Tibet House. Over a period of 5 decades since its inception, Tibet House has come to be recognized as a significant institution for the dissemination of Tibetan culture and for Buddhist studies. Tibet House has a museum whose purpose, in His Holiness' word, to bring the heritage of the past in close contact and with value their current, a library housing a sizable collection of important books and manuscripts, a publication unit which publishes around 10 to 15 books a year, and program division which regularly organizes lectures, seminars, conferences, film screenings, and exhibitions. Tibet House also offers two courses on Buddhist philosophy on the ongoing Nalanda Master's course, which was launched on 9th December 2016 on the occasion of 51st anniversary of Tibet House, New Delhi, in the gracious presence of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, along with Sri Kiran Rijuji, the Union State Minister of Home Affairs, and Sri Najib Jung, Lieutenant Governor of Delhi. And the diploma course was launched in 2018. The first batch completely successfully its course in last year in October. The second batch of Nalanda diploma course is already started, and the registration for this course is extended till 29 February 2020 under the request of many participants. For this batch, we have received 950 enrollments so far. Tibet House also offer Tibetan language course on a regular basis. There are 4 levels of learning offered at the very nominal fee with special discount for students and monastics. Till date, 18 batches has been successfully completed. Thank you. And now I would like to request Dr. Nivedita ji to kindly share the overview of the program. I would like to share the brief introduction of Dr. Nivedita Chalilji. Dr. Nivedita is a mental health professional with diverse experience across 2 decades in a variety of organizations. Her academic training in occupational therapy and social work has emphasized on the needs and the strengths of the people living in mental health issues. In her career, she has not only provided care in acute health setting and counseling centers, but has also worked for suicide prevention and disaster relief. She has served as a faculty at the Tata Institute Social Sciences and continues to serve as a guest faculty for counseling and art-based therapy courses in Mumbai and Ahmedabad. She runs a center called Earth in Mumbai that helps address the needs of people dealing with mental health issues and provides various capacities, building workshops for the organizations in the field. Earth also offers the Applied Buddhist Psychology course in Mumbai and Chennai in partnership with BAM. Thank you. Please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gomala. Good morning, everybody. It's such a joy to see all of you here. Immense gratitude for being present on a weekend. I want to share something. When I started planning the talk and presentation for today, my first plan was to dive into mental health statistics and talk about the huge problems that we have in mental health care, how severe and the number of disorders which are alarming and on the rise, and how mental health care, there is a deep gap in between the number of people who need to access help and the ones who can actually access help. And as I sat reviewing my slides last night, several things happened, mainly thanks to the wisdom of my teachers, the wisdom of the teachings that I've received, this wonderful team of Tibet House, and the immense amount of collaboration and what that has done to my thought process. And also another triggering incident yesterday where I had a conversation with Dr. Kaveri Gill about certain kinds of concepts. So the idea of all of these things playing at the back of my head as I sat and reviewed the slides, it made me question, why am I approaching this talk with statistics? And then I recognized how my own thinking works, where I start by saying, this is a problem and let's find a solution. Now, there's nothing wrong with this, but to really recognize this is just one perspective and one way of working. And the way of working of saying problem and solution, and this kind of problem, and therefore this kind of solution, comes from years of academic training, comes from professional experience, comes from my own personality traits, and so on. But as a result of all of these interactions, now I'm able to say, yes, that is my perspective, but that there are multiple ways of addressing the same thing. And the deeper we are able to recognize this, it leads to great amount of insight, both at a personal level as well as a professional level. So, really, when we talk about the purpose of the conference and the relevance of the conference, of course, mental health is an issue. Of course, we need to address the mental health care gap. There's no reason not to. But also, we must recognize that our approach and our ways of seeing things comes from our training, comes from our ways of being. And that is really only one way and one school of thought. The more we are able to open our minds into seeing things from other perspectives, the richer our lives become, and more likely being able to bring benefit to more people, which is why many of us are involved in this kind of work to begin with. So, really, our goal for this conference is to move towards a genuine understanding of different approaches to mental health, to not think of something as mainstream and other things as alternative, or something as more important and the others as less, to grow personally and professionally through dialogue, which is mutually respectful, to recognize similarities as well as differences between schools of thought, and really hopefully to engage in developing a network of professionals who can access each other over the future as we learn to work together and collaborate. So, keeping this in mind, what we've done is we've structured today and tomorrow. Of course, we started with some wonderful pre conference workshops yesterday. We had 4 parallel workshops on arts based therapy, presence oriented psychotherapy, inner child healing, and the Ahamkara intervention in counseling and psychotherapy. All of this happened yesterday afternoon at Tibet House. Um, Today and tomorrow, we are really going to break the entire conference down into 2 main sub themes. One is really the view or theoretical framework of any school or approach, and second is the methods and techniques that really emerge from this view. Our panels have been structured in a manner which they either discuss the view or the practice or a combination of both. So today we will be having 3 panels which will start after the inaugural sessions. The first panel discusses medical perspectives, and the second panel discusses neuroscience and an overview of Indian psychology and Western psychology. The first 2 panels are largely about theoretical frameworks and views rather than practice. By the last panel of today, we move towards a slightly more integrated view of the theoretical framework along with methods and techniques. And the third panel will see a session on arts based therapy, Buddhist psychology, yoga, and an integrated view of mental health and well being. This same kind of combination of view and practice continues into tomorrow morning's panel, where we have Western medicine, we have mindfulness based cognitive therapy, as well as inner child healing. The fifth panel is very interesting and really brings all of that diversity into practice. So, we'll be having rehab as a model, we'll have the biopsychosocial spiritual model, and we'll have the use of assessments in planning therapeutic interventions. So, what does one do with all of this diversity, and how does it really play out in the field? And being able to bridge that gap, we're hoping for this panel to kind of bring that together. After which, we've also had a students' panel discussion so students can discuss their learnings. So, all of this will be done through the process of both presentations as well as question, answer, and group discussions. Some of the students have also put up charts outside, so please do have a look during the breaks. Please feel free to engage with the different practitioners from different schools of thought, and we're encouraging them to also leave some of their contact details behind so these conversations can continue. A couple of things. This by no means is an exhaustive list of approaches to mental health, and I say this with great humility, saying that there is so much more that we all have to learn. But this is really a beginning in creating a space which can hold and engage with different kinds of practitioners across the board. And we hope it's really the first step of many. So with this aspiration that we all learn to bridge gaps, and that we all learn to work together and we are able to pass on the benefit to many, many people, I hand over to our wonderful keynote speakers for the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nivedita ji. Now I would like to request Venerable Geshe Dorje Damdila to share the thoughts on Eastern perspectives on psychology. Venerable Geshe Dorje Damdila is currently the director of Tibet House, New Delhi, the culture center of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. While being assigned with the responsibilities of the directorship of Tibet House, he also gives regular lectures and leads philosophy classes in Tibet House and other places as well. He travels widely within India and abroad to teach Buddhist philosophy, psychology, logic, and practice. He has also worked on several books as assigned by the Office of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He visited the United States in 2008 to work with Professor Paul Ekman on His Holiness Dalai Lama's book on ethics for a new millennium, part 2, and the book series Art of Happiness, which were jointly written by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, such as Graded Path. He has written a number of papers for national and international conferences on the topics such as the paradox of the brain and the mind, and ultimate reality according to Arya Nagarjuna. He is currently in the process of writing 2 important books, one entitled Journey into the Paradox of Brain and Mind, and the other, What Constitutes the Ultimate Reality? The Effects of Understanding the Ultimate Reality. Kishila.
Respected Chief Guest, Dr. D.S. Ranaji, and convener of the conference, Dr. Nivedita Chalil, and then our keynote speaker for the Western psychology, Mrs. Madhuri Mananji. It's a great joy indeed for me to be with all of you here. And how this, the conference, the idea of this conference was conceived was that it has been a few years that I came to know Dr. Nivedita and her scholarship in psychology and the application of the scholarship, which very clearly is represented by her warmth towards others, and then her, say, the charisma, by being so gentle, many people easily being influenced in a very positive way. So this is all very inspiring, the things for me, and because of which I was just so keen that we convene some conferences and so forth, that as many can be benefited from, say, our collaboration. So this is how this conference came into being. And so today what we have is more the application side of the psychology. Okay, and also I need to acknowledge the fact that the manner in which our moderator, Ms. Tinzi Dumala, explained that Tibet House came into being and in a form of a vision of His Holiness the Dalai Lama to, say, in the first place, to resurrect the incredibly rich Nalanda tradition of Buddhism, which once flourished, thrived in India. And believe it or not, I've been hearing that Nalanda was the first university in the world. And then I was, from one corner of my mind, it was as though like, oh, well, perhaps it was I've been in the Buddhist ghetto. So therefore everybody's saying Nalanda, Nalanda. Otherwise they could be somewhere else. But I was once in Bolerio, that university, which is considered to be the oldest living university. And then recently, during the public address of the President of India, he mentioned that Nalanda was the first, I don't know first, but one of the most prominent universities in the world. And of course, it happened in India. So then I double checked it and came to realize that indeed, Takshashila, Nalanda, they're more like the Takshashila, maybe the first, Nalanda, then Utandapuri, Virgamanashila. They were really like the oldest universities, but they're not living. So this is the point. So with this in mind, so this brilliant tradition of psychology, philosophy, logic, and astronomy once thrived here in India and disappeared, unfortunately. But unfortunately, people mix the two things: the brilliant knowledge, the treasure in the form of knowledge, versus the ideology. People mix the two things, and then they dare to destroy the knowledge, which is the treasure of the world. Unfortunately, this is what happened. And yet, it was lucky that this was maintained with such rigor in Tibet over about like 800 years. No, over 1,000 years since 8th century AD. And now we do have the places such learning centers and monastery universities in South India, also in North India, on large scale universities where those traditions, the logic, philosophy, psychology, which was so brilliantly evolved in India, are still being revived, still being maintained, so fresh. So with this in mind, so I'd like to just give you a brief presentation of the Buddhist psychology, how the mind is seen from the Buddhist perspective, and then, of course, to give you a broader picture of how the mind is seen in generally, in a general sense, like in the usual dictionaries, how the mind is defined, and then what is the view of Charles Darwin on the mind? Then what about Freud? And then what about the classical Indian treatises? And then the Buddhist tradition. Okay. So this is a big question, and one thing that you may very often hear from people saying that nobody could define mind. So I think these are too presumptuous. So various philosophers, psychologists, very refined philosophers, psychologists, they defined, and the epistemologists, cognitive scientists, they explained or they defined what mind is. So let us look at some of these points there. I say in the Cambridge Dictionary, which we all can easily just Google and easily can just flip through. It says that part of person that makes it possible for him or her to think, feel emotions, and understand things. So this is, I would say that this is a very, whether it really is the case or not, the point is that how it is defined, it is done so well. I would really appreciate that. And then the next, you go to Charles Darwin's The Origin of Species, his book. So he explains how the animals evolve, instincts. He talks mainly about the instincts, how the instincts, they are a gift. They are gifts to us from evolution. of the human beings, of the animals. So to my imagination, it is far more satisfactory to look at such instincts as ants making slaves, not as specially endowed or created instincts, but as small consequences of one general law leading to the advancement of all organic beings, namely, multiply, vary, let the strongest live and the weakest die. So survival of the fittest. So this is the Charles Darwin's view. It's more like the instinct that we have. Okay, this is what we can see. Then the Sigmund Freud, what is that? He talks about 3 levels of the mind, preconscious, conscious, then unconscious, subconscious together. Maybe slightly they differ. Otherwise, so under these 3 groups. And then the neuroscience. Neuroscience, for example, so of course there's no one consensus to say that this is the view of the neuroscience. And the neuroscientists, unlike the earlier traditions, even one scientist will explain that they have the total freedom to say what they think. So generally speaking, Eric Handel, who's a renowned neuroscientist and a Nobel laureate in physiology in 2004. So what he said in his book, In Search of Memory, what he said is that 2 hypotheses on mind that take of the neuroscientists. 1, there's no mind, there's only the brain. One hypothesis. Number 2, there is mind, but it's a derivative, it's the emergent property of the brain. When the brain dies, it disappears. Okay, this is the neuroscience perspective. So we have to keep them in their own perspective, clean perspective. Then the next comes, say, of course, the many classical traditions of the philosophy, religions, and so forth. They come up with the concept of the consciousness, mind, or not really mind as consciousness, but as consciousness. And they emphasize so much on what consciousness is. So that I don't want to go into detail with that, because the consciousness, the way they present, is more the esoteric, and it's not something empirical. So this being a more academic discussion, the meeting. So therefore, usually I prefer to keep it very empirical. Empirical meaning something which we can feel, touch, experience. Okay. So this is what on that ground, whole might a talk on the Buddhist psychology, more precisely Buddhist psychology, I would call it empirical psychology. Psychology which we can feel, unlike something which we can feel later on, not now. Unlike that, something which we can feel right here now. So there, how the mind is defined. So you can see that at the end, I said clear and knowing agent. So this is so important, and it's not I'm not saying that this is the definition of the mind, but what I like to share with you is that we all experience mind. We all experience mind. And some, when they go through their personal meditation, when they go through their personal inquiries, then questions arise, what is mind, right? So the mind, the tendency of the mind is that when you sit idly without looking for the mind is so vivid, the anger, look at how the anger arises. And look at how you feel so restless, unhappy when a trigger, when an external factor triggers something within you, how unhappy you become. So that thing, unhappiness, actually there's a neural correlate there. From the neuroscience point of view, there's a neural correlate, but you don't see the neural correlate. You don't see which kind of transmitters move from one neuron to the other. What kind of synaptic connection is being created or dissolved, or say they loosen, or say the chemical, the transmitters or electrical transmitters, what is transmitted, you don't know. But what is so visible to you, what is so experiential within you, what is so empirical within you is experience. Yes, I'm unhappy, I'm in pain. Please give me morphine. Which means that you have this is something undeniable experience. And that experience, which all of us have, when we see somebody going through the process, everybody feels empathetic, very empathetic. and wants to help the other person. When somebody is crying in agony out of hunger, you go to reach out. We don't know which brain to fix, which neuron the transmitters to fix. We don't know. But we give food, we give water, we console the person. So there's one phenomena. There's one phenomena which you know so well, which I know so well, and that is the center of the universe. For you, that you are the center of the universe. You are the most important thing in this world. And within you, what is the most important thing is brain power. I don't care whether the neurotransmitters transmit from the first part of the brain, the first part of the neuron to the second. I don't care. My pain should go away. So there are two phenomena there. One is the neural correlates what is happening there, which is not at all access. We have the access. We don't have access to that. But the experience is what you have direct experience, direct access. So that is the mind. So there, this mind, what exactly is that? So as we can see up there, except for the Cambridge dictionary, all others are more like giving like the correlates or indicating to the illustrations or indicating to the characteristics, not really identifying what that mind is. And that is what we all experience. We all have it. We all experience it. So it is defined as clear knowing agent, an agent within us, which is clear in nature and which has the knowing nature. These two things. What do you mean by clear knowing? This is so important. And this is where many people in the first place, they simply deny, saying that nobody can deny what mind is. And in fact, once I was in a reputed university abroad, and then the head of the HOD of the Department of Buddhist Studies, we were talking about the mind, and he said that, oh, mind is very abstract, nobody can explain it. I was shocked. If this is his attitude, HOD of the Buddhist department or Buddhist Studies department, then no doubt everybody else on the earth will say that nobody can define it. So then I explained this, and then I explained it in detail. What is meant by clear? What is meant by knowing? What is happening within you, which the neuroscientists cannot see, which the neuroscientists can see, which you cannot experience, you cannot see. What you can see, which neuroscientists cannot see. What the neuroscientists can see is your brain. What you can see, but the neuroscientists cannot see, is your mind. So this is how I explained it to him. Okay, so there, this is very important. Clear knowing, the knowing agent. So we see that finally you're happy, not happy. Okay, I'm successful, not successful. I'm good in psychology, I'm not good in psychology. Well, psychology is a soft subject. No, it's a wonderful subject. Whatever. Your mind decides. Your mind decides. There's one agent there which decides that I'm very happy with psychology studies. Well, I'm not too happy with psychology studies. So that there's some agent there within you which decides. It's not a body. And then you call it the brain or not. This is a different discussion. So now somebody who's very sensible, who's more empirical will say either is the brain correlates or there's a mind there. So this is the going to be the position of somebody who is more empirical in nature, somebody who says that, okay, I want to accept only things which are more empirical, not really non-empirical, which I cannot see, experience. So that part I'll keep it aside. If this is your attitude, then you will come to 2 points. Either the brain correlates or the empirical experience of the mind too. So with this in mind, what is clear? What is knowing? This is very important. So for example, let's say that let's not forget that we're trying to define what mind is. What mind is, not the characteristics, not the let's say that not some illustrations. What exactly mind is? So isn't it defined as the agent? An agent which knows things. An agent which has the clarity as its characteristic. What do you mean by the clarity? Then what do you mean by knowing? The clarity, let's say that the mirror, when the mirror is not clear, when the mirror is very dusty, then image cannot be formed. So when you close your eyes, you think of your mother, you can think of your mother. Image of the mother comes to your mind. So the image of the mother comes to your mind. On the mirror, to have the image of the mother, the mirror must be very clear. Surface of the mirror must be very clear. If the surface is dusty, then the image of the mother cannot be formed. Whereas in your case, you can have the image of the mother very clearly. You want to see the mother in, they say, the daylight or in the dark. You can visualize that very well. So image is formed. That is not an external image, it's a mental image. You cannot deny the fact that this image is formed. But it's not a physical image, it's a mental image. So for image to be formed, there must be the surface on which the image is formed must be very clear. So this mind which becomes very because which has a sense of longing towards your mother, that's mind. That mind, they must be very clear. And it is the clarity that the image can be formed. The fact that the image formed means it's very clear in nature, clear. And then number two is knowing. Okay, just for your little digression, when I was age 20 or 21, I was so curious what this mind is, and I cannot really locate where this mind is. And I went to my teacher, a hermit, a great scholar plus a practitioner, and a great practitioner who is really meditating on what the mind is. The way we can just meditate on the breath. Likewise, he's literally meditating on the mind. This is like watching the mind, like watching a movie. And then I asked him, what is this mind like? Then he explained it as though it's so easy. What he said is that, don't you see something like a mirror inside you, where any image can be formed? He said it. And then still those who there's no mirror there. If I go inside, you see there is heart, lungs. What is he referring to? So later on, then with all these detailed studies, you come to realize that the image can be formed. So here, we're going from a very gross presentation of the neurons and the physical body to the little subtler aspect of the reality, subtle aspect, which is not physically tangible, but still can be experienced firsthand. So you can have this image formed. There's an agent on which the image is formed. So that is the clear. Then number two is that the mirror. While the image can be formed on the mirror, but the mirror does not have the capacity to know that, okay, this is the image of my friend. This is the image of Mr. Anandji. Right? This is the image of, okay, this person, that person, so forth. No, the mirror does not have that capacity to know things. It does have the capacity to have the image, to create the image, but it does not have the capacity to know. But when the image is formed, the image of mother is formed, you know, oh yeah, now the image of my mother comes very clearly to my mind. You know that. That knowledge, what knows that? There's an agent, which you have the first-hand experience, which the neuroscientists cannot see in you. Of course, we can go a little into detail, and some of you may think that, yes, of course, neuroscientists, they know that, they can, also these are all what is known as dictionary creation. So I don't want to go into this detail. So they have to create dictionary. They do not see. It's just the beginning of my talk. Okay. So that part I'm going to skip, how the neuroscientists, they try to create dictionary to read your mind. They don't read your mind, they infer your mind. Okay, so the point is that whereas your mind, you know that you are the best person in this world who knows what is being formed in your mind, what is being conceptualized in your mind, what comes to your mind. It is you who knows it best. What is that agent within you who knows it? It's an empirical fact, it's not esoteric. The fact is an empirical fact, which you can feel that, yes, I know this. So that agent, which has the clarity as the aspect and which has the ability to know things, that is your mind. Okay, so the mind. Now, if somebody is to really understand mind in a more empirical, experiential form, yes, something which I can experience, then See, the three things. One is mind is empirical experience. I can experience number one. Number two, you go a little deeper into the brain, then mind as neural correlates. There's not really mind, it's just the brain. It's the neurons. They communicate with each other, then they transmit the neurons, the transmitters from one the neuron to the other, then just the neural correlates. That's it. There's nothing mind there. Then number three is no, the neural correlates is there. We cannot deny that. But there is the what you call as the relatum. Relatum meaning, say, this neuron, what is operating there, there's a corresponding agent which is operating. The two things are happening, not really simultaneously, but happening in a loose sense simultaneously. One is a physical operation and one is a mental operation. There are two things happening. So the neuroscientists, they're focused on the physical, not on the mental. So that one is known as the relatum of the neural correlates. Okay, these are the three things. Now, to know this concept so well, the mind different from the brain. So for that matter, last year in May, I was in Israel for a conference on consciousness, and it was convened by a very renowned neuroscientist, a very senior neuroscientist, and many neuroscientists were there, and one physicist was also there, and yes, and the author of this book, Sapiens, he was also there, and so we were there, and then there were most of them, they were neuroscientists. So they were talking about how the mind reduced to the brain. And then they talked about the brain, okay, cortex, cerebrum, and then they go down to the individual neurons, they then go down to the chemicals, chemical reactions. Then the question is asked, if this is what is happening, it's purely mechanical. Yes, it's mechanical. If it's purely mechanical, where is the free will? This is debate. Then the neuroscientists, they could not give the answer. Because the moment you reduce the mind to absolutely, say, just try to explain mind, reduce perfectly as the physical matter, brain, then the debate arises, where is the free will? Whereas all what we're operating is operating on the basis of the free will. Whether you want to come here or not, nobody forced us. Nobody forced me. Nobody forced you to come. And this morning, if somebody says that, okay, you are such a stupid guy, then, oh, my day is off now. My day is mood off. I don't want to go to conference. So you use your free will not to come to conference. And the very next moment, somebody says, no, just ignore that person's crazy. Yeah, that's true. I want to go to conference now. Again, you use a conference with the free will. So free will is something undeniable fact which governs the universe, which governs this world, your world. So therefore, how do you explain free will if things are to be seen as purely mechanical on the brain? So this is a big question. And then on that, to resolve that problem, then I explain this. As long as you reduce the mind to the brain, this is undeniable problem. You cannot avert the problem. Because laptop, the example that I gave is that the laptop, the moment you try to reduce the laptops to the electrical signals going here and there, electrical signals per se, they are not the laptop. You go into the atoms. None of the atoms is a laptop. On the atomic level, laptop is not operating. Laptop is operating on a macro level. So both the realities. So if you try to reduce the laptop to the atoms which constitute the laptop, the whole concept of laptop will dismantle, will disappear. So therefore, we have to accept two realities. One, the micro reality, and the other, the macro reality, both overlapping each other. So this is, if you cannot fathom this understanding, how to see the correlation, how to see the overlapping of these two realities. If you see reality only in one direction, on the macro level, the mechanical macro level, on the neurons and so forth, then you are bound to face with many challenges and difficulties which you cannot get away from. So the form is empty means that what we see as water, as a physical form is water. If you go on the atomic level, the water, concept of water dissolves. On the atomic level, there's no water. Water, for the minimum, something to be water, it must be the combination of 3 atoms, 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen, without which the water makes no sense. So when you go on the atomic level, the water makes no sense. So the water is empty. So what we see as water from the outside with the naked eyes, on the atomic level, it is empty. So that being empty on the atomic level, this is also reality. That being water on the macro level is also reality. Both are the two realities of the same object. Unless you appreciate this concept, there's no way by which you can come out of this on the riddle, the problem, the challenge, the paradox. Okay, form is empty, empty is a form. Empty is not other than form, form is not empty. Okay, I'm not going to go into detail of this. So the next, just to give a quick overview, very quick. I'm not going to go into detail. So now with this, after knowing what this mind is, the clear knowing agent, so this mind, find that I'm happy, not happy, say the health science, and then the neurology, neuroscience, the psychiatry, all these things, they're trying to tackle the mind. So knowing what this mind is, we have to know the mind so well if you want to tackle the mind nicely. Because there's a problem with the mind. Some go to deep depression. So there, of course, there is the neural correlates there. So with this, alongside, the person cannot bear that experience. That is known as the mind of depression. So there, how to tackle it? For that matter, we have to know the mind so well. If you know the mind so well, then it can be tackled very nicely. So for that matter, the mind, the nature of the mind, what the true nature of the mind is, the true nature of mind, for example, let's say, if there is, let's say, the gold, if you smash the gold into small pieces and mix it with the mud, the nature of the gold is to glow. The nature of the gold is to glow, but the gold doesn't glow when it's mixed with the mud. It doesn't mean that there's no gold there. It's simply because the glow is obstructed by the mud. So what do? Remove the gold, separate this gold from the mud, and the gold inside will start to glow. Likewise, the true nature of mind is so pure. However, say for some of us, we may feel so demoralized. Just you wake up, you feel so heavy, sad, for no reason. Sad, and then easily agitated, irritated for small reasons. So there, what is happening is that there's a mind which is so pure in nature, but it is not pure now because that is mixed with the mud of the mental defilements. And these are not to be seen as a dogma, as the preaching. But this is the reality, is that you have to discover it. It's not that you have to listen to or believe in it, that you have to discover these through systematic studies. I don't want to go into detail. Okay, just to cite, these are extremely powerful, this psychology, taught by R. Nagarjuna in Dharma Dadastava, which reads, given the example that your mind is not whether you're boy or girl, there's no difference. There's no distinction on the basis of your gender. So both have the same capacity, ultimate capacity, not just capacity, but the ultimate capacity. So because of which the Buddha emphasizes so much on the gender equality. There should be no discrimination on the basis of the gender. Why? Because we are just equal. There's nobody who's superior. There's nobody who's inferior. We're all equal. In what way? Just as the boys have the best of the mental the capacity, the girls have the mental capacity, the best of the capacities there with the girls as well. What is that? Vaidriya, a precious gem, is luminous at all times, but if confined within its ore with the mud and so forth, its light is not visible. Just so the Dharma Dhatu, free of stain, while it is obscured by the afflictions, mental defilements, in samsara doesn't shine its light, but in nirvana it will beam. After removing the mental dirt, then the perfect treasure within each one of us will glow with total happiness and fearlessness. And beautiful. How to do that? So a garment here is a very specific garment a garment which is fireproof. If you have a garment which is fireproof, and if it is soiled, what you just throw into the fire will burn the dirt and it will not burn the cloth, and the cloth will come out so clean. So likewise, this mind that we have, which is which is like the fireproof garment with so much of soil, metal, dirt, you expose this to the fire of the wisdom. For the wisdom, all the metal dirt, the dirt will be consumed, and the very clean, pure mind within you will come out. Okay, it says, likewise, mind that is so luminous is soiled by stains of craving and so forth. The afflictions burn in wisdom's fire, but its luminosity does not. Okay, so the two things. Now, how to fix this mind? What is that wisdom? This wisdom should involve two things. One is the wisdom to see things as they are, to see things very objectively, number one, to build the wisdom. Number two, to expand this wisdom out of love. So two practices are involved. Number one is to fix the cognitive thought process, and number two, to fix the affective thought process. When these two are fixed so well, your mind is healed completely, and you become the true nature of your mind. The perfect potential within you manifests in full form, where you are totally free from all experiences of pain, fear, and you have the infinite happiness. Okay, just for okay, these are the 5 things. Of course, I don't have time. Okay, so here of the 5, we see number 3, discrimination. That is the cognitive thought process within you. And then number 5, intention. That is the affective thought process within you. Cognitive, the wisdom side. Affective, the love and affection. You build on these 2 areas, and then your true nature will come out. Okay, so that is to fix your cognitive thought process. Then the one is to fix your affective faculty. So these are one is to fix the wisdom, and the other one is to fix the unconditional love. Okay, if you're interested, then I'll just keep this on the screen. Finally, what for? We have to study all these things for the better humanity. So the way Albert Einstein said, this is one thing which is so close to my heart. Finally, all but we learn, they must have a deep meaning for yourself and for your family and for the world. So what he said is that a human being is a part of the whole. In other words, the human beings, we suffer because of the optical delusion, because of our ignorance, because of lacking the wisdom, because of lacking the love. And then he encourages us to expand our wisdom, to expand the circle of love and affection, so that you will see that your happiness and the happiness world will grow. A human being is a part of the whole, called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This is what's happening everywhere in the world. This separation, this distinction, divides. And on this basis, so many killings are happening unnecessarily. So this is what the Albert Einstein already seen that happening in the future. So then continued, and this delusion is a kind of prison for us, seeing that you and I as different on the basis of religion, on the basis of caste, creed, whatever. This is poison, he said. This is imprisoning yourself. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task, what is our job now? Must to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Geshe-la. Now I would like to request Mrs. Madhuri Mananji to kindly share her thoughts on Western perspectives on psychology. And Miss Madhuri Menon is the Dean of BAM. She completed her master's in social work from Tata Institute of Social Sciences, and subsequently her postgraduate diploma in urban and regional planning. Since then, she has worked in various corporates such as Indian Oil Corporation, Bharat Petroleum Corporation, SkyCell Communication, and so forth. Ms. Menon was a board member of BAM at Banyan for 20 years and continues to serve on the board of various other NGOs in dealing with women, children, and education. She has been a visiting faculty at various universities, and her primary research area include gender and urbanization. Please, Ms. Banerjee.
Good morning, everybody. Am I audible? At the outset, let me thank Yeshilaji and Nivedita for this uh, opportunity to share a dais with my two gurus, especially in the field of Buddhism. They are the ones who first initiated me through one of our diploma programs that we have at the BAM that we are organizing. We just finished that, and it was an entirely different trip that I was on, and quite an eye-opener in so many ways. Dr. Rana, it's a pleasure to be here share the dais with you. I am not going to elaborate on the basics and definitions of psychology like Eshila did on to this audience of experts from various fields. But my mandate was to talk about looking at the Western perspective to understanding psychology. And so what I intend doing is just look at the bird's eye view of this whole. Thank you. At this kaleidoscope, there are myriad permutations and combinations when you look at a kaleidoscope. So at different points, who sees different things and different aspects, because psychology as we know it today and over the changes that have come over the last few hundred years has brought the science, and as an art, a science, a practice, it's come a long way. So the Western contribution, I mean, I can't really sum it up in 10 minutes, but just have a very brief glimpse. And there's no dispute that psychology is really a practice of the East from very ancient times. India, China, Japan. But when we think of East and West, somewhere we stop at our borders and say, okay, this is East and then beyond. But somewhere beyond Karachi, Kabul, whatever, there were other places which had Western, which are part of the West. I mean, it had psychology also way beyond ancient Greece, ancient Egypt. The papyrus talks about thought disorders, mental illness, mental health with different terminology. Existed much further west than Plato, Aristotle talked about the workings of the mind, and Hippocrates talked about mental disorder and the four humors. So there's been a tradition from both sides, whatever name we may have called it, whatever understanding there was of psychology. In fact, the very word psychology is held to be of Western origin because it's from the Greek study of the psyche or the soul. And the word today, as we know it, of psychology, is believed to have been a Latin word which was used maybe late 15th century, early 16th century. So beginnings of modern psychology is usually traced to the whole experimental psychology, and also the first time that a psychology lab was established by William Wundt in the 1800s. And this was the lab in Leipzig, which was followed by various others in the US, and India had its very own laboratory, psychological laboratory in 1905, which was started in Calcutta, now Kolkata, in case there's somebody here who objects to calling it Calcutta. But this was started by Narendranath Sen Gupta. And one of the biggest contributions has been of the West, through all these was, as Yeshilaji talked about, that it was esoteric and not empirical, but this was also trying to prove it was. There was observation, there was learning, there was experiment. So there was an attempt to bring this into very empirical form. The world wars, history and the world wars provided the context for further growth in psychology. The two world wars saw the development of mental tests. The World War One was the initial phase when you looked at something called mental tests, and this was administered to about 1.8 million soldiers. So there was building of evidence-based practice. World War II saw psychology being used extensively to study troop morale and use clinical psychology. So the two wars also focused on people with brain damage and uh, studied them, what was then called shell shock, and which today is very much a part of psychology as we practice it, which is the PTSD, and we look at other aspects of uh, impact of trauma. So although we don't need binaries, the whole idea of Eastern and Western, as the title talks about Eastern and Western perspectives, it's not to compartmentalize both, because there is somewhere along there is we're completing the cycle. I'll come to that, but some of the contributions of the West in the modern science of those days had a lot of impact and influence, whether it was Newton laws of physics and understanding the development of scientific methods consisting of, as I mentioned earlier, observation, formulation of hypotheses designed to predict events and outcomes, testing of these two through further through further observations, all contributed to the psychology of evidence-based theory and practice. Formulation of theories, frameworks, observations, research, field trials, general orientation of Western psychology towards this has been a major contribution, and look at alteration of observable behavior. Of course, he elucidated so scholarly on what the mind does, but then to be able to observe some of this, or observe behavior, which was the manifestation of what was happening inside. So psychology, as it developed, the Western's contribution was to be able to study some of these, because we depend a lot in the Eastern tradition on narratives for many things. So can we move from there into a scientific methodology? Therapeutic study, attitude, diagnosis, treatment, psychotherapy, and psychology are all great contributions to psychological approaches that we take so much for granted today. Over the last few decades, the growth of various branches and advent of cognitive, existential, phenomenological, humanistic, transpersonal perspectives. I'm not going into any of these now. I don't think I'm competent enough to either. But here is an amalgamation of theory and observation and practice of process rigorously built on the works of many a leading psychologist, many from the West. The talk of psychologists, the names spring to mind: Freud, Jung, and all the founding fathers. But initially, Western psychology was interested in changing consciousness of disturbed individuals, and I think this has been again a great move forward. Today, psychotherapy is increasingly interested in aiding the normal, again a very tricky word. So the normal individual to reach the maximum of their potential. So when we talk about mental illness at one point, and then now we've moved on to mental well-being, how can we prevent certain circumstances or prevent certain situations from leading to a stage of whether it is to the point of taking their own lives, or creating an environment which you can recognize, diagnose. So when we train people for this, we're looking at part prevention, and where it's already happened, which has been beyond their control, look at cure. So one of the areas of the Eastern and Western philosophies begin to draw closer here, because the cycle is moving back and over what experts in the field describe as the three waves of psychotherapy, where we're looking at the first wave of psychoanalytic treatment, then followed by the second wave, cognitive and behavioral therapy, and now there have been other waves, not as big tsunamis, but waves large enough to make a difference to the world of knowledge and practice. And here we come to the reintegration of mindfulness. And now the next wave is moving into the area of becoming aware of and integrating mindfulness. This mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, leading psychologists like John Kabat-Zinn, who's from the University of Massachusetts, who's discovered or who's formulated treatment for pain. How can you manage something which is not going to be something you can get away from, and how do you make life easier for yourself? They develop techniques with chronic pain, and then there are various other offshoots. There's MBCT, then there's dialectical behavior therapy, compassion focused therapy, CFT. So the idea is a lot of these are now beginning to look at combinations of Eastern and Western philosophies. And I think the biggest takeaway for all of us here is that we're looking at, with a platform like this, we're looking at how can we integrate concepts, how can we integrate practices. And I think we've put together a very brilliant panels looking at both aspects of theory and practice and frameworks. So, and the process, like I mentioned, all cyclical processes, we're now coming to that, complete the full cycle, and we can only hope for a seamless organic integration of Eastern and Western perspectives. The aim and objective is to lead to not just an explosion of knowledge and practice, but expands the horizons for developing human potential. And it requires a fora like this, which has been brought together to look at the balance of and harness the potential of both worlds and create a totally new world. And I think the contributions of both East and West have their own great strengths, which have developed over the centuries, and to be able to bring that together, making use of this common thread of Eastern philosophy of mindfulness, ideas that an integral part of this whole concept, and of course Buddhism, when you're looking at detached observation of thoughts, looking at experiences of compassion, how do we integrate these? And I'm grateful to fora like this. It needs a combination of people to come together to be able to say, how can we take this forward in the best possible way? And thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Mrs. Madhuri Menon-ji. Now I would like to request our chief guest, Dr. T.S. Rana-ji, to kindly share his thoughts on this conference. Dr. Devendra Singh Rana, Chairman, Sri Gangaram Hospital, New Delhi, an eminent nephrologist of international repute, has been lauded for his outstanding contribution in the field of medicine, especially nephrology, world over. He has done his MBBS degree from the Indira Gandhi Medical College, Shimla, and he obtained a medicine diploma from Postgraduate Institute of Medical Education and Research in Chandigarh, and nephrology from AIIMS, New Delhi. Dr. Rana has joined Sir Gangaram Hospital in 1981 and established nephrology, dialysis, and kidney transplant services in India's non-government sector. He performed stunned kidney transplant services and procedures himself to become the first nephrologist in India to do so. His contribution towards nephrology, dialysis, and kidney transplantation led him to be the president and the secretary of Indian Society of Nephrologists. He founded the Indian Society of Hemodialysis and to standardize the procedure of hemodialysis. Recognizing his excellence, Sir Gangaram Trust Society appointed him as the chairman of Board of Management in May 2011 onwards. He has received Dr. B.C. Roy National Award in 2017 2017 and Padma Shri Award in 2009 by the Honorable President of India for his eminent contribution in his field. His services in promoting medical education led him to be awarded the Transcendennial NBC Medical Teacher of Excellence Award by the National Board of Examination. The government of Himachal Pradesh honored him with the Himachal Gauravna Award. Dr. T.S. Ranaji.
Honorable Sri Tamdalji, Mrs. Menon, Nalita, and my colleague Dr. Suresh Gupta, who invited me on behalf of Nalita Chaudhary to be with you this morning. In the conference entitled Understanding Psychology and its Practice, Eastern and Western Perspectives, I am very glad. I am right from the childhood, I'm very fond of abstract thinking and the psychology. I've read a lot of books on this. I don't know really whether human beings are different in any part of the world. Fully evolved human beings, they are alike. Whatsoever language they may be speaking, whatsoever country they may be belonging, whatsoever the religion they may be belonging, their abstract thinking will be almost similar. And psychology, maybe that just to control mind, there were various methods employed or used by our philosophers, our rishis, our gods in this land, but they were of similar nature in Western also. Anyway, you will be all learned vision people will be discussing this thing today and tomorrow. Just let me give a little this thing that how does WHO define the health? This is a complete well-being, physical, social, and mental. That is a health. And we call also body, mind, and soul. That also this audience must be knowing. But one thing is very important, that we require healthy body first, then only we can have control on mind and we can have all abstract thinking. If the body is not healthy, we are not able to meditate, we are not able to do anything. And what happened during the last century, we had a very deep knowledge, extensive knowledge of this body, how does this work, and to the extent that how the neurons work at the brain level and they control our behaviors. And what happens when they become defective, how can people develop with like dementia, Parkinsonism, and they cannot be cured by any method we have tried so far. There is a science we know about it. We could understand the functioning of cells, which is a smallest unit of the body, and we could go even beyond further actually. However, we utterly failed to give, treat, or cure the diseases. Many diseases take place, and we are able to, even modern medicine is able to provide only palliative medicine, many, especially in organ failure. And that is a very dismal picture also. Probably that is God never created us to be eternal. So He had to send us, or we have to go back to Him, spending some time here. What I feel that what is required to be, what we require to have healthy body, and that is healthy food full of nutrients and micronutrients. We require exercise. We require yoga, we require meditation. We require some leisure time for us. Modern technology gave us a lot of things in diagnosis of diseases, in making our life comfortable, but it took away one thing from us, and that was our cultural ethos, east or west, doesn't matter, everybody. When we were students, I studied in a small village. I belong to a small village in Himachal Pradesh, and most of the Tibetan people sitting here, there is second home for them. I belong to Hamirpur, and a very small village. I used to travel 12 kilometers to a school, and we never walked, we only ran, and we never minded it. We never felt that we are walking or doing something part of nature, we accepted. We played. Today there is a extinction of games for the students. They're all the time involved in telephones or computers. Grandparents, as parents, we are not able to see our children, but we are able to enjoy with our grandparents. When I was the happiest person, I got so many awards. Probably there were not happy moments. When my daughter was blessed with a son, that was the happiest moment for us. But now I find the tragedy that I remember my grandmother that she gave me values of life. But today my grandchildren, they are not interested in me, they're interested in me only so far I give them telephones, so I give them so sad. And they are not bothered about chocolates or something like medicine. They only one thing that telephones must be there, So that you can discuss later on. But what I felt, and I just read one sentence, I am very fond of Honorable His Highness Dalai Lama. We had been very fortunate that he chose our hospital to have treatment when he was sick once. And after that also I met him 3 or 4 times. And he had written that if you want to be happy, or you want to keep other people happy, then be compassionate, that is only compassion everywhere. That is what is required. Unfortunately, and that we do not require compassion only for these human beings or our friends, those human beings. We require compassion for all beings created by God, whether it is river, whether it is plants, whether whatsoever, wherever there is life, we require compassion for that. And over last century, there was death also, and that has led to this so-called environmental change and what are you are seeing so many things. So I think in our day-to-day life, we have to be compassionate to not only our fellow beings, but to everything bestowed by God on making this earth livable. We should endeavor to make, we are the fully evolved human beings, whatsoever He created, It is our duty to look after everything, whether animals, whether plants, or whether our surroundings, And that is what if this audience, this can teach, because that is where people, those who are interested in this abstract thinking, they can give a little new direction to or can restore the ethos of the culture, Then other words are sympathy and empathy. They have to be used also wherever you require sympathetic, you require to be empathetic. As far as doctors are concerned, they have to be more empathy. They have to use more empathy, and they have to be very passionate in their profession to treat patient, And that is how I say. And we all have to learn the art of giving. God never takes away anything from us. He's all the time giving us. And we are told by our ancient, everybody, rishis, gurus, that we are all part of teachers and God, and God is living within us. So we are all supposed to give only. We should not expect anything in that. The only thing is that whosoever gives us, we should have attitude of gratitude, and that is also very important in life. And that will give you all those inner happiness. And we have to accept the situations, beings, whatsoever is there, to be happy or to be fully beings, whatsoever we see as it is. You will find in your life that you will not be able to change many circumstances. In a democratic setup, I see many things they accept from the government, which are full of corruption, not only in this country, any other countries also, but they're all blaming them. I always say, don't blame them. You contribute in your own way, whatsoever you contribute, or be brave enough and fight election and be a great leader and change the world. But in your own way, wherever you are working, whether you, howsoever small post you may be holding, whether you are just a spy karamchari, whether you are a doctor, whether you are prime minister, but in your own way, you can always contribute to make this earth worth living. And that's our duty. We should be honest, upright, and transparent in our dealings. Not only for this purpose, but we have. If we are doing this thing, happiness will be automatically outcome. We don't have to purchase it. We don't have to get it. That will be automatic. And I would not like to give this lecture because he could have given this lecture for hours together to you regarding mind, which I could not actually. I still feel that is a once somebody can really control his mind, a healthy body can control mind, and then vice versa also. The mind can give you a healthy body also. Many illnesses arises because we don't have proper attitude or proper thinking. They can be certainly cured by doctors. Sitting like I just happened to meet the homeopath. Every system is okay now that they try to cure that and then give you normal health. Similarly, of course, you become physically ill, then there is a origin of many psychiatric diseases. There you require a doctor to treat them. Evidence-based medicine has to be given. Our is a absolute evidence-based medicine. But you require abstract thinking, you require gurus, you require rishis to give you abstract thinking to make this world very better. But first you require to help. And in the end, I would like to end my talk with, this was the teaching of our late Chidi Baba, love all, serve all, help ever, hurt never. If you can have this attitude, you have lived your life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. D.S. Anaji. Before concluding, I would like to request Venerable Geshe La to kindly present the souvenirs and the kata, Tibetan traditional scarf, to our chief guest and keynote speaker and our convener. Dr. D.S. Anaji. Mrs. Madhuri Menonji. Dr. Nivedita Jalilji. Thank you, Geshe La, and we shall recess for a tea, and it will be served on the bridge at outside of this hall. And the next session on medical perspective, homeopathy, Tibetan medicine, and Ayurveda starts at 11:05. 11. Okay, 11.
Ask if is about 15 minutes okay?
Yeah, 15 minutes is fine. So 11:40. Thank you. Sorry.